Hello, I'm John Feldt. This is the weekly water outlook from Blue Water Outlook, produced on January 27th, 2013. Data here, couldn't do much about it, but you can see in the Ohio Valley that gray is missing data. There was definitely some precipitation in that area, but around the area over the last week, you can see for the most part we had many areas that were quite dry. Parts of the southeast U.S., large part of the south central U.S., and parts of the north central U.S. either were very light amounts of precipitation or no precipitation at all. There was a bit of rainfall and snow over the western part of the U.S. and quite a bit of snow over the Ohio Valley and upper Ohio Valley, the northeast U.S., the parts of the upper part of the mid-Atlantic, as well as the Great Lakes states. Now, if I want to show you the percent of normal for the last week, what you see here is the widespread below normal rain across the nation as indicated in red. The southwest U.S., even though it wasn't a whole lot of rain, does not get a lot of rain or snow, and consequently it was above normal in that region. And then the northwest was sort of a mismatch of both areas of above normal and below normal rainfall. Now, we're in the middle of winter, so you would expect some snow. You've probably heard of the snow in the Washington, D.C. area and parts of the very heavy snow across the parts of the Appalachians into Ohio. And you can see here the green and the yellow are the heavier amounts of snow. But we had a widespread lighter snow as well in the areas of purple as well as around the Great Lakes. And I'm going to be talking in today's briefing that this general pattern looks like it's going to persist as we round out January and get into February. Now, more and more, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the snow cover and, more importantly, the water equivalent. But this is the snow on the ground, 41.6%, not a lot of change since last week. Generally, the snow on the ground is light. The light amounts of blue, light blue are light amounts of snow. The white is very light. Then the darker colors are when we get more significant snowpack. Now, I mentioned I was going to talk about the heavier amounts of snow and the water equivalent. Ignore that circle there, but what I wanted to show you here was the heavier amounts of water equivalent, the higher amounts. And generally speaking, I think we would want to look at definitely the very darker blue and the purple for the potential for the most water equivalent should that snow and when that snow would melt. Right now, it's pretty limited, pretty high over parts of Minnesota and North Dakota, but right now it's nothing all that impressive, and we still have a lot of the season to go, but this is something we're going to have to keep a very close eye on for spring snowmelt. But right now, pretty manageable, probably below normal for this time of year. Now, we have been getting quite a bit of flooding over the central part of the U.S. I'm going to be looking at this in depth in my newsletter that I'm issuing later this week, talking about some oscillations that might be correlated to the Ohio River Valley flooding. But you can see there are some spots, yellow and orange are generally strong within bank or some minor flooding. So this is not significant flooding at this time, but you can see that some points are in flood. And this time of year, you would expect some points to be in flood. I wouldn't say this is all that unusual for this time of year. Now, I haven't talked about El Nino for a while, so I thought I'd provide an update here since there was a mid-January update this week. The reading has gone slightly negative. You can sort of see here it's probably about a minus 0.1 in the region, 3.4 region. And that's solidly neutral. And the models right now are continuing as we get through the winter months into actually the spring months, keeping it either a little bit above zero or a little bit below zero. The trend, it looks to me, like it's actually beginning to sag a little bit more south towards La Nina. Now, I don't think it's going to go in that La Nina, but it very well could stay negative as we go through the winter rather than slightly positive. In either case, that would be neutral. Okay, now let's look at the jet stream this week. We are going to have some changes. One of the things that I wanted to point out is we've had quite a bit of temperature fluctuation over the last couple weeks, but not nearly as much precipitation fluctuation. Despite these temperature changes, the jet stream has overall not brought significant precipitation patterns except for some very isolated locations. The jet stream or the oscillation, the Arctic oscillation has been very strongly negative the last couple of weeks. It's now gone back towards neutral, but that has brought that cold air down. Now, this is a sequence we're going to go through this week with the jet stream. Early this week, we're going to have a trough of low pressure out in the west, and then digging up or lifting up into the eastern U.S., moderating the temperatures a bit. Then as we get towards the middle of the week in yellow here, this is a jet stream pattern. It moves from the west into the central U.S., and then by the end of the week is the area in blue. That's going to be the predominant jet stream pattern then for some time. So basically, early this week, we're going through this transition where it's setting up these two waves here for the latter part of the week, and the green is the latter part of the week, and that's going to be the predominant pattern that'll last for a while. And that's going to bring enhanced precipitation to the upper Ohio Valley into the Great Lakes and part of the northeast U.S. And then south of that jet, it's going to be fairly quiet. So as far as the precipitation outlook for this week, the heaviest rainfall is going to be in that area in purple, and that's along the transition. As that upper system sets up in that semi or quasi stable position by late this week, this will be right on that transition zone. The northern end of this will be a significant snow once again because it will be colder air. In that trough, actually, it'll be quite cold with below normal temperatures. However, south of that jet stream, it's going to be fairly dry. So we're going to have prolonged and extensive areas of light precipitation or dry areas with no rain or snow whatsoever. And you can see the area blue is the more enhanced precipitation. Here's a snowfall forecast, a model output for later this week. This is Tuesday into Wednesday. And it's the probability of 4 inches or more of snow. And I just wanted to sort of put that up here to show you that Minnesota or Michigan looks like it's going to be sort of the center of action for the heaviest snow. But I think in general sense, like we saw last week, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, northern Indiana, Ohio, Minnesota, and into the eastern and northeast U.S. will be fairly significant chances of snow as we go through the week. Now, soil moisture, because of that precipitation, is expected to increase. This is the change in soil moisture, the forecast through the end of January into early February. And the most significant enhancement of soil moisture looks like it's going to be in the area of that darker blue there, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, as well as Illinois. And that's where soils will be getting wetter. In those areas, more and more we'll be looking at vulnerabilities for flooding. I think in those areas, we're getting close to, if we get heavier either snow or rain, there is that potential for flooding. Matter of fact, when we look at vulnerabilities, I wanted to sort of point out here some areas here. I mentioned that up in the upper Midwest here, right now the vulnerability is not all that high for spring snowmelt flooding. Matter of fact, it's low. But that can change as we get through the rest of the season quite a bit. But right now, this is a vulnerability I want to bring to your attention from Mississippi, Louisiana, Mississippi, northern Alabama, parts of the southern Appalachians, eastern Kentucky and Tennessee. There's a vulnerability here due to wet soils and fairly high stream flow, as well as areas north of that here. And these areas here are vulnerable to flooding should heavy rain occur. Now, this week with that inch or so of rain over that area, it's probably not going to do it. It'll probably maintain this vulnerability. But still, I think we need to keep our eyes out for this area because there is that chance. So as we get into the end of January into early February, these trends look to me to be somewhat stable. And I think the trends I wanted to point out, this is precipitation. This is pretty much the area of enhanced precipitation, the end of January into February. And then definitely it looks like fairly extensive areas of very dry weather over the central and western U.S. And after today's this week's precipitation, it looks fairly quiet over the southeast U.S. as well. With that semi or quasi-stationary upper trough, that jet stream I mentioned, temperatures will be pretty chilly over the northeast U.S. with temperatures well below normal right through the end of this month. So the takeaway points for today's briefing: the active spots this week, just like last week, the Ohio Valley into the Great Lakes, with both rain and snow, modest rains over the southeast U.S., and then otherwise widespread dry conditions continuing over the central and west. Now I'm working on my newsletter, finishing it up, and I will be putting that out later this week. If you ever have any comments or suggestions, feel free to email me, john@bluewateroutlook.com. Again, look for my newsletter later this week, and I will be updating the weekly water briefing next week. Thank you.